How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with James Elvery. He is a New Zealander, and he is the founder of Race Ranger, which is a cool little tool that goes on the bikes of professionals and soon to be even age groupers that for non-draft legal races, it lets referees know if people are too close or too far, well, I guess not too far, but too close to each other and therefore drafting. And also, it's really cool because the athletes can see the sensor on the back of the competitor in front of them, and it will have either a green, yellow, or red light to indicate how close or far away you are in the draft zone. So without further ado, here is James. Huge giveaway alert. First of all, thank you so much to Synergy Wetsuits for sponsoring today's episode. It is awesome because they are giving away the Sin Skin 3, which is a state-of-the-art swim skin that'll make you faster when you are in the water coming into T1. So here's how you enter that. First of all, there will be a link to our Instagram in the show notes listing out these 5 different things you got to do to get in on the giveaway. But they are, first, you got to follow Stupid Questions and Synergy Wetsuits on Instagram. You got to like the giveaway post, tag 3 friends in the comments, sign up for our email newsletter at stupidquestions.show. There's a link at the top of the website and at the bottom where you can drop your email there. And then the 5th thing is leave a review of the podcast on your preferred platform of choice. And again, that link is going to be in the show notes. Go check it out on our Instagram page, Stupid Questions Podcast, Instagram, and it'll be pinned at the top of that Instagram as well. So thank you so much to Synergy for sponsoring today's episode and partnering with us on this giveaway. I look forward to seeing who is going to win. I was just going to ask, so you got your first race of the season coming up tomorrow. So obviously you're saying a little low sleep. How's the preparation and everything been going for that?
Yeah, pretty low key, which is good. This was our first race we did ever last year. So it started last year. Compared to last year, it's a lot easier now. We know what we're doing, and we've got a few systems and processes now down and streamlined. So on that side, it's fairly easy. The reason I've been burning the candle a bit at night, the last few nights, is just with the time zone down here. Got quite a bit going on in terms of lining events up for this year, and have to get on the phone and have these phone calls with people at 11 o'clock, and then it says you got to follow up straight away and rewrite the contract and send it back. So last night was 2 o'clock, and there's been a few of those this week. So
right, yeah. Well, good deal. Well, I want to get into all those things. There's a lot of things I want to talk about. But the first, how I kind of just want to start the beginning of the podcast is ask a little bit about who you are as an individual. So I figured what better question to ask than who is James?
Sure. Well, it's a good question. I am a dad of 3 kids. I'm turning 40 in a couple of weeks. I guess give you a bit of background there. I live in New Zealand,
Congratulations.
down in the bottom of the world. Thank you. And what else can I say about myself? I'm the CEO of Race Ranger and co-founder of Race Ranger, which is a new sports technology for triathlon, which is a system that goes of hardware that goes on the athletes' bikes in non-drafting triathlons. Most of your listeners probably know you're not allowed to slipstream or draft on the bike section of most races. And the way that works currently is the athletes are guessing what the distance is, and the referees patrolling the course on motorbikes are also guessing. So we've just built a system basically that measures that distance very accurately, gives a real-time indication to the athlete as to how close they are following, in the form of a light that changes color and flash pattern on the bike in front of you. That's what Race Ranger is, and we've started the company a few years ago and built it to the point where we're probably going to around 45 races this year. So that's pretty exciting. And what else am I? Husband, father, mate, primarily, and ex-athlete, I guess you'd say. I used to race myself, so that's kind of how I ended up pursuing the problem that we're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So we will definitely get into that as well, because you have quite the history. I was reading just from the bio on your website and whatever I could scour from the internet, and it sounds like you started swimming and doing triathlon from a relatively young age. You did that for a number of years, decided to move on to exit that career. So into doing what you're doing now, and before that even specialized. But before that, kind of talk me through who was James as a kid.
Yeah, I had a pretty, pretty good upbringing, I'd say. I was born in
Yeah.
Christchurch, in South Island of New Zealand. Um, we moved around a lot, was one thing. So we moved when I was about, what was it? When I was, I want to say 7 years old, we moved away to another city, to Sydney in Australia. Spent 2 years
Okay.
there, just for my dad's work. And then we, had 2 years in Sydney. Then we moved to Wellington, New Zealand capital, for 2 years, and finally moved again. So every couple of years, I had to sort of make new friends and say goodbye to old ones, and kind of got into that pattern for a while there. But always grew up doing
Yeah.
sports, and as many as I could. My dad was I'd say,
Yeah.
fairly decent level age group triathlete at the time. He
Okay.
went to Hawaii once and did the Ironman a couple of times, but yeah, he was sort of a recreational athlete. Got into it a bit late himself,
Yeah.
and then my mum was a nurse, and she just did the odd marathon here and there kind of thing. So pretty active and sporty family, and we just sort of they
Yeah.
did everything they could for us, and took us to whatever practices and sports games we wanted to pursue, and to a pretty older age, so probably about 13 or 14, just basically did every single sport we could get our hands on. I had one younger sister, 2 years younger than me,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
pretty early on, I got this, I don't know, this idea in my head that I wanted to be a triathlete when I grew up, and I think I'd been going to races with my dad. This is back in the late 80s. I can remember when I would have been 5 or 6, so yeah, 89 or 1990, at a triathlon, or a few
Yeah.
triathlons on the weekends, where the guys would get out of the water in their speedos, and they'd have someone in transition to help them with a bucket of water to clean the sand off their feet, and all this sort of thing. So got memories of that. Um, and actually, at that time, I actually recall trying to understand what this drafting thing was and why everyone was so annoyed about it after every time we went to a race.
Oh, really?
So kind of, my awareness of the problem goes back
Mm.
that far. So that's how I sort of, so had this dream I wanted to get into triathlon, and that kind of sort of developed over the years. And I do remember going for a run with my dad when I was similar age, sort of 5 or 6, in Christchurch, around the Hagley Park there in the centre of town, and him sort of explaining why do you go for training runs, and it's sort of your body gets tired, and
Oh, wow.
explaining to a 5 or 6 year old, and your muscles don't like it, and then they go home and they build themselves back up stronger, and then the next time you can go faster and longer. And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea, and that kind of was
Yeah.
led me to big part of to where I am today. Yeah, I could keep rambling if you want.
Yeah. No, yeah, no, it's totally good. I was gonna ask, just from that, it sounds like you were relatively close to your father. Would you say that you're closer to your dad than your mom growing up?
No, I'd probably say both. Like, yeah, they were great parents. My dad was going to work. Mum wasn't really working after we were born. Probably she did go back to work for a few years, for about, I don't know, 7 to, yeah,
Sure.
recently. But yeah, they're equally close to both. Yeah.
Yeah. Good deal. And then you started to like really grapple with, like you were saying, when he was explaining running for the first time, and you latched onto that. Was it because you saw a challenge, or is it something that he showed interest in and it just became interesting to you? Like, how did that love begin to grow and about sport?
Yeah, I think I just enjoyed the idea of the whole thing. Pushing yourself. I guess he wasn't the best athlete. Like, I think he ran like a 34-minute 10K, and he thought that was pretty good. And but he had this.
Yeah.
He has a very positive attitude. My dad, like, he's famous within our wider family for being like annoyingly positive all the time. And he sort of, I guess, he instilled in me that,
Nice.
like, if you're going to race, then you have to want it. You have to work really hard for it, and you have to push yourself very, very hard. And the harder you go, the more that everyone else hurts, and then you can win and you can beat them, and this is a great thing. And I sort of got this, I don't know, misguided belief that if I worked harder than everyone else, then that's all that mattered, and I could be the best, and that was quite simple.
Mm.
And so sort of had
Yeah.
this, I guess, quite arrogant belief that you see the top champions kind of need eventually, that I could
Yeah.
be the best, and I could, if I could beat whoever I wanted, and it was just down to me to figure that out. Didn't understand DNA and talents and all that sort of thing, but at that point, but that's sort of what drove me early
Mm.
on, and wanting to impress my parents and people important to me was always a good driver for any little kid. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting to me the parallels between entrepreneurship and kind of what you're talking about, the naivete and when you're young about wanting to be a professional athlete, not necessarily knowing all the pieces that are involved, like you're saying, DNA, genetics, on top of all the hard work. Because in my experience with the entrepreneur world, it's like, oh, it's a simple idea. You put two and two together. Maybe I'll go find some pieces and make this thing happen. But as you obviously know, because you've been through this, yeah, it's almost like an advantage, I think, to be that naive in the beginning. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess it wasn't until pretty late in my pro triathlon career that I sort of, I realized, there's only so far I'm going to go here. My talent will run out has run out basically.
Yeah,
And not knowing that going in obviously is good, but I guess it would have been a bit nicer to figure that out a little bit earlier. I wouldn't have, I'd say, wasted part of my life, but I wouldn't say wasted because I had some great experiences and learned a lot. But um,
sure, sure, sure.
also, going into the entrepreneurship journey, what you don't know what you don't know, and it is quite a good thing to start with for that
Hmm.
first time founder, because it's literally
Yeah,
if someone sat you down and said this is exactly how it is going to play out in the future, um, you'd run a mile. It's pretty crazy. But then
yeah, yeah.
once you're a few years in, you're invested, and you need to you want to see it make it, and it's always just seems like
Keep going.
not too much further, or you'll be there. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you said for first time founders, is this technically this company is you're the first time being a founder of something, or
Yeah,
did you do other things
so
in the past?
to give a quick summary of my 40 years of life, um, to 15, I was a normal
Yeah,
kid.
no rush.
At 15, I started racing overseas for doing triathlons, wanting to win the
Hmm.
Olympics, etc. Follow that dream. I remember sitting in a high
Yeah.
school class, in a boring science class, and the back page of my notebook, my textbook, I knew where the London Olympics were going to be in 2012. I knew where, at that point, 2008 was going to be Beijing, London was going to be 2012, and then the question mark on 2016. And I was like, yep, I need to be world champion this year,
Yeah.
junior champion, etc. And that was what I wanted to do. So I did that full gas. I did go to university, and I did an exchange semester, so I was able to race overseas in Europe, and but everything was about triathlon through my
Yeah.
education years. um, I ended up racing at the sort of elite level for New Zealand in the it was ITU at the time, now World Triathlon Series that all the top guys are on. Um, Broke into that. I got my sort of breakout result was I got fifth at the Junior World Championships in Mexico in Cancun, which was
Hmm.
2002. I was within sort of 10 seconds of the win, so I thought I was onto a good thing. And my
Wow.
arrogant belief that I was one of the most talented athletes in the world, and if I just dedicated myself, I would make it. Sort of, manifested itself.
You're
Um,
not far off, I will say.
I had a certain level of talent for sure. Like I was winning New Zealand schoolboy championships and things like that. But um, yeah, long story short, I pursued it to the fullest. Traveled the world, went to over 40 countries on that circuit, and chasing little points all over the place.
Wow.
Um, I was
Hmm.
in the era of Gomez, and then the Brownlees came along, and that sort of time, and got to a level where I could pretty comfortably finish sort of in the 30s of a top level race, but I was struggling to crack much higher than that. Fast forward, the 2012 Olympics were coming along, and I was just at this point, the logical step was to make an Olympic team. I was just desperate to do that. At the time, New Zealand had I think
Hmm.
60 men in the top 80 in the rankings, so it's pretty competitive time for 3 spots it was. And
Wow.
we had we'd won obviously the gold, silver medal in 2004, another bronze with Bevan Doherty in 2008, and so it was quite a big thing to make that team. Ultimately, I sort of decided that with my coach that my best shot was to put myself forward as a swim bike domestique. So although I was quite an okay runner, I wasn't showing in races the sort of finishing kick on the run to be a real contender at that point. Believed I could be still later years,
Sure.
but ended up sort of focusing on my swim and bike and trying to put myself forward as a domestique for our 2 top ranked athletes, which would have been Bevan Doherty and Ryan Sissons at the time. So honed that, and I was, my peak of my career, I guess, was 2011. I was able to get myself to a level where I could get out of the water with the very front guys in the top sort of 5-10 out of the water with, Brownlees and Gomez and Fredino and those boys. And my strategy was to try and force a swim bike breakaway. So get about 8 guys away to show that I was a strong cyclist to be selected to help our team on the bike. And so, some of the best results were 15th in the Madrid World Series, and then the test event in London the year before the London Games. I was in a bit of a famous breakaway there with Alistair Brownlee and 2 others. Got about a minute sort of lead on the field, and then ultimately got slowed up by the field. But I sort of had shown that I'd had the talent to, I guess, do that job if they wanted someone for that job.
You could do it.
And then ultimately I didn't make the team because the sort of 3rd ranked athlete, I was probably 4th to 5th, in terms of results merit. The 3rd ranked athlete was actually the only one who made the selection criteria. That was at the Sydney World Champ Series in 2012. That's Chris Gemmell, who works at World Triathlon now. And so that was fine. He obviously earned it. He got selected. They had to take him, and then they weren't going to leave the other 2 guys behind. So that was sort of when I was around 27, 28, and I could see at that point that I worked bloody hard and I trained very hard, but I could tell, particularly from that race in London, there was just another level of talent there that I just, no matter what I would do, even if I stayed for another 4 years, I wasn't going to be able to match Alistair Brownlee and Javi Gomez. They just have the DNA. You get to a certain level and the DNA runs out, I sort of thought. And looking back, that was probably a good decision, technical good decision, because I probably could have made the 2016 Games team when I was 32 for New Zealand, looking at my sort of progression, and even if I just continue the same level. And I would have sort of made the swim bike breakaway there and probably finished somewhere between 10th and 15th at the Games would be my prediction. It's always a, shoulda, coulda, woulda. But, was that coming 10th and 15th worth all the other experiences I had in those 4 years from 28 to 32, and where that would have put me at that point. So, I basically finished up at the end of the year. I tried in 2012, I tried a long course season where non-drafting. Didn't really enjoy it that much, mainly because of the adaptation back to drafting to non-drafting from drafting for so long. I was a strong cyclist, but I would have had to really spend a couple of years to get to a competitive level. And I wasn't really, I was kind of pretty cooked at that point. So I retired from competition in 2012, and I basically fell into a job at Specialized straight away, the bike company here in New Zealand. I was sponsored by them my last couple of years, and I basically the story was I'd met Felix from Challenge Roth, who's the organizer of probably one of the biggest races in the world, at a couple of challenge events when I was in that last year. And he was super friendly guy. He came in, walked by me in a bar in the street and said, "Oh, hey, could I," in Barcelona at an event, and said, "Could I sit down and have a beer with you?" And I was like, "Oh, absolutely, sure." And we ended up having a couple of drinks and had a great chat. And I was just, blown away. He was a super positive guy. He reminded me of Dad, I guess, and his positivity. And I was like, man, this is what I'll do. They're trying to expand their series. They're trying to compete with Ironman. There's a good market here. I'll try and work for them to help them expand around the world, because I've just finished my international business degree, and I have good connections in the sport, and I understand triathlon, and this could be a good thing to start on. So I had this idea, and I went. I'd met a lady in France in that last year, who's now my wife, and I was living in her apartment, just sort of dreading going
Can't
home.
go
I guess
wrong
it was
there.
starting to get a bit cold in Europe and in Paris, and I sort of just delayed returning home to face the music. I guess I'd always sort of dreaded, oh, the day I'll have to get a real job. It's going to be like, oh, so boring. Like those days you don't want to go
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
school. You have to do that every day for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's to all the athletes out there. That's not the reality
Oh
at
my.
all. Don't fear the real world. But long story
Yeah.
short, spent all this time researching the triathlon market and the size of it and things and all the numbers from the last 10 years. And yeah, I was like, yeah, it's a decent sized market here. Came home, went to see Felix's number two, who was a New Zealander at the time, at an expo at a triathlon that was happening in December. And I had my CV ready and I was going to pitch my, hire me. And she wasn't there, but
Yeah.
my sponsor was there, and they said, "Oh,
Bummer.
what are you doing? Here to get a job?" And they said, "Oh, we've got a job going. Here, here's my CV," kind of thing. And long story short, yeah, started working there.
Oh, nice.
2013, started 2013, and I've just left now 3 months ago in the end of 2023. So I did 11 years at
Yeah.
Specialized, which was really formative and awesome. So my first real job, I had done some sort of part-time work at a city council in Christchurch, sort of in the sports facilities team, and worked in a bar for three
Yeah.
months. But that was extended my working life at age sort of 29. So
Yeah.
I did all sorts of roles at Specialized, marketing, sort of sales support. Sort of met for a few years. I managed the sort of in-house customer services team for a while. Then in the last 4 years, this is all in Auckland, up in the North Island. The last 4 years, I was able to sort of
Hmm.
change my job and move to the South Island, where we currently live in Wanaka. And I was basically just a sales rep, visiting bike shops and keeping them happy, selling them bikes. And this allowed me some freedom to, I guess, work in my spare time and around that on the Race Ranger project, which
Very stranger. Yeah.
got to dive into. That has been really a long-term thing. My co-founder Dylan McNeese and I, is a good friend of mine. We started forming the idea
Mm-hmm.
similar time as that time I was sitting in my girlfriend's apartment in Paris, using these numbers that I was digging
Oh,
into
really?
for the event business, to sort of form the basis of, yes, triathlon is a decent sized sport internationally. There could be a good niche little business here. It was Dylan who was sort of pressing me on the drafting. He was doing non-drafting competitions in America at the time, and the drafting thing was pissing him off. And he was like, yeah, someone's going to solve this with technology. Why don't we have a look into it, sort of thing? And I was sort of kind of interested at that point, but my main thing wasn't that idea. But we sort of pursued it and had no idea what we're doing. Neither of us are engineers or had made anything before. We just knew triathlon and
Mm-hmm.
knew there was a decent problem here that annoyed a lot of people. So we we actually formed a company for the first time in
Yeah.
2014. We had some people do some little investigations. Didn't come to anything for a few years there. We were sort of floating along, and then from 2017 we got quite we found a technology that looked like it would solve the problem quite well. It wasn't that well known at the time. We got
Sure.
from 2017. It's been pretty intense with a lot of work around the day job. But having the day job allowed me to get to where we are, because we would have run out of money really quickly. So
Yeah.
and now
Yeah.
this year I've gone full time and on Race Ranger, and it's getting real exciting. So that's turned 40.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say we covered just about I think 18 or 19 years in about 15 minutes. There's a whole lot,
Yeah,
um,
lots
and
happened.
yeah, I can only imagine. I guess because you brought us a little bit more to the future, I'll ask some questions around that, and I may dive back into the past a little bit. But with your jump that you just made, like I to 2023, you were still with Specialized, and then you stepped away at the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken, and you just made that full jump. How has that affected you? Like from a very core level of like, okay, now I'm providing for my family. I have three kids, 7, 5, and 3, I believe, or right around those ages. Like those are really big moves. Not to age or anything, but especially when you're 40. Although I did read that the older you are and you start a business, especially after your 30s, the higher chance you have of success just because you have so much experience, which obviously you have racing and professionally. But what was that jump like for you in deciding with you, I assume your wife and, your business, or business partner, Dylan McNeese, like that's a huge thing.
Yeah, it was a big decision. it had to happen. Where I was really pushing it myself. Like I haven't been in a good place for the last couple of years, mainly physically, because you have priorities in life. One is
Hmm.
to be there for your family and to be around and spend a lot of time on that. And then, for me, it was okay. Next one is my job, keep my job so I can feed my family. And then Race Ranger was sort of a close
Yeah.
second, third on that. And unfortunately, my looking after myself and keeping exercise going always took a distant fourth. And
Hmm.
having friends and maintaining friendships is probably fifth down the rung. And that I've been a terrible mate to a lot of my good long-term friends in the last few years, just haven't been around, which sucks.
Yeah.
So things were not sustainable as it
Sure.
was. Like I was literally, my days were basically get up when the kids get up, which is generally early, do my day job. Here and there, I might do the odd Zoom call or fire back an email for Race Ranger during the day. Working from home was great for that. Finish the work day, 5, 6 o'clock, spend a few hours with the kids, dinner time, story time, put them to bed, get them down sort of 8:30. And then most nights for the last couple of years, I've been then going back to the desk and working until sort of 1 a.m. generally, 12 to 1 a.m. Found if I pushed later than that, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But 12 to 1 and then getting up sort of 7, I could do that for, sort of 6 months at a time. I did need a nap during the day on the weekend with my kid at the time, which is convenient, but I'm losing that at the moment, unfortunately. They're getting out of their nap.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sort of isn't
Yeah.
good for you long term. And that was pretty clear and very testing on the family at times. So it wasn't a hard decision. I knew I needed to do it, and I believe in what we're doing with Race Ranger will work. It was just a matter of getting investors and timing on board so that um, we could pay myself basically to be able to do it. So, well, yeah, it is scary now that, with a startup, you have a finite runway of cash at all times. We're not, self-sustaining at this
Yeah.
point. So there is a point, in my cash flow when
Good.
we will run out of money unless good things happen or we get more investment. And that's a bit scary,
Yeah.
Although to your thing about being 40, yeah, I don't really, I guess I feel like I'm about 30 because I've only worked for 10 years in real world jobs. So I have a
Yeah.
bad back, so I don't physically feel like I'm 30, but that's my mindset. I kind of I still act like a bit of a
Yeah.
kid sometimes, which got me in trouble at Specialized a bit sometimes. But
That's good.
you know, that's I guess part of being an entrepreneur is saying what you think and not beating around the bush and
Yeah.
just acting like an entrepreneur, I guess, and that's it doesn't fit. Not everyone fits into a big organization. I sort of realized that in the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. So, I've dabbled in entrepreneurship since I was in college. So this question comes from a little bit of an experience with my wife and just seeing her commitment and interest level and my different ideas, because I'll come up with a new idea or something, and then I'll be preaching that it's going to be the biggest baddest thing ever to hit the market, and I'm just blowing it up, and then my wife's a bit skeptical until after it starts to gain just a semblance of traction, and then once she sees that traction, like she really latches on, and even to the point to one time I had to kill a project and she cried about it because she had kind of fallen in love with it. So my question to you is for Tatiana and your wife, through Race Rangers birth and I guess infancy, and now it's starting to get legs and walk. How is Tatiana's, if I'm saying her name correctly, Tatiana's
Yep.
commitment level and belief in Race Ranger changed over the years?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So she's she's been really, really positive and similar to yourself, a bit skeptical and doesn't want to believe in it. I think because she had a dad who was quite entrepreneurial, so she's used to, like you say, like this is the
Oh yeah.
new, this is the thing, this is going to be the one, and it not working out a few times. So and she's also, to speak a bit about my wife, she doesn't have a great background in that her mother, well, yeah, I won't speak too much about her family life. I wasn't around, but she wasn't that well looked after when she was a kid,
Sure.
and then her mother actually passed away when she was about, I think it was 17, at a time when her dad wasn't really in her
Wow.
life as well. So from 17, she was on her own
Hmm.
and had to fend for herself, and there was no sort of backstop. So from that, I believe she's very risk averse. So she, she buys more insurance than I would think is a good idea, like income protection insurance and things like this that
Sure.
have, because the buck stops with her and she has to look after herself if she gets in trouble. So she's always, I joke with her,
Yeah.
I give her a hard time saying, she's always got to have something to worry about. If I fix this thing, it's okay. Don't worry, you'll find something else to worry about. So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess she's, in that sense, she's risk averse. But at the same time, she's supported me wholeheartedly in what I'm doing and has given me a lot of rope on this project in the last few years, and that's been amazing. I actually believe that if I had met her earlier, I probably would have kept doing triathlon a few more years. I mean, I had my own
Yeah.
voice in my head, but also my parents were kind of like, when you're going to get a real job, you're getting old. Who's going to hire you if you finish up when you're 33, 34? You need to get out there while you're still young enough and get a job. So I probably got sucked into that advice a little bit and threw it in probably earlier than I would have. It's a fun life being a pro triathlete. I could have enjoyed a few more years of it. And I think she would have probably supported me and encouraged me to keep going at the time if I'd had her, I guess, more
Yeah.
heavily in my life. But I'd already kind of decided I was just finishing when I met her. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely been hard times when, and a lot of strain on her when, she works as well, but part-time and looks after the kids, where I have to disappear for a lot of weekends and I'm not around. I'm not able to
Mm.
sit and watch TV with her after the kids go to bed that often. And yeah, she's very, very, very supportive. It did come to a point where this year, last year, sorry, 2023, we were raising money, and it was a very
Yeah.
difficult year to raise money. The global financial climate wasn't good for raising capital, and
Yeah.
we'd had some initial good success and raising getting commitments from our existing investors at that time. But then it really stalled for a few months, and we were looking like it was all going to go tits up. And I had those classic, lying awake at night, just stressing about, I'm gonna have to wind
Yeah.
this thing up, and I've taken all this investment from a bunch of people who've entrusted me, and that's all gonna go to nothing, and I'm gonna be worthless, and then I'm gonna
Yeah. That's a lot
have
of
to stay at
stress.
specialized and redesign my career and all this sort of thing. And she basically got to one point in about August where she said, "Hey, like, this is not, we can't keep doing this. Give this Race Ranger thing 2 more weeks, and if you
Mm.
don't get the investment there, just walk away." And so I had to kind of nod politely
Wow.
and go, "Yep, I understand, honey." And yes, that was part of the point where I guess she cracked. And at that point, I just got a bit desperate too, and I did a LinkedIn post and an Instagram post, and from that, the triathlon community around the world came to our
Wow.
rescue, I guess, and we raised the full target amount that we were trying to raise, and here we are. I was able to, happy days, but it could have gone pretty differently. So yeah, no, she's been a huge support and encouragement, and yeah, she's starting to believe that it's going to work, which is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's super special to be able to have somebody who does support through that. But
Yeah.
I mean, 2 weeks looking down the barrel of this shotgun for 2 weeks, and then you coming up with a post to write, and then people responding to it. What was it you were thinking about in the moments leading up to even writing those posts that you put out there to kind of seek help? Like, what was going on in your mind?
I thought it would work, but to an extent, I didn't know if we'd get the full amount, because I'll give you the numbers. Were in New Zealand dollars, we were basically sitting at around 250 grand raised or committed, and we needed to get to about $1 million. And so
Hmm.
it just wasn't coming. And I had one particular investor who was looking at a pretty large chunk, probably about half of the remaining amount. But the discussions just kept going for months and months. Like, it was, I think, 6 months until we
Yeah.
finally, after I did these posts, got them over the line. So what was going through my mind? Pretty
Hmm.
desperate, but I thought it would work. But I was also thinking, oh, why didn't we do this earlier? Because I knew it probably would
Really?
work. It was just, it's not, I guess it's not really a done thing normally to advertise that you're raising money like that. It's generally done more privately and behind doors. So just checking that we weren't breaking any laws and doing it the right way, and then yeah, launching it. But yeah, that sort of what was going through my mind.
What was the language around that post? Because I actually, now that you said that, I have a slight remembrance of actually seeing that come across my feed, I believe. But what was the language and like the platform that you used to kind of push that out and to seek that help from the community?
Yeah, well, in the typical vein of social media, it had to be only showing the positive side, right? You can't. Nobody,
Yeah,
nobody would come near us if they really knew how desperate we were at that point. But um, it was
we're done
totally a
and
function
helpless
of
now.
just
Yeah,
how how tight the capital climate was basically the time. No, the company was fine. It was, and the vision we had was great. It was just that no one was willing to invest any money at the time. So um,
yeah,
yeah, I mean so it was, yeah. Hey, look, we are raising. From memory, I can go back and look it up, but we are raising.
very
We
fine.
have we had a good support. We had maybe 3,000 followers on Instagram at the point, and a few on LinkedIn. And yeah, if you'd like to come on our journey, we'd love to talk to you, sort of thing. And probably from that, I got, I reckon, about 30 people contact me, and a pretty high hit rate. Probably
Wow,
about 25 out of the 30 have ended up investing. So um, yeah, there's
wow,
like, we're fortunate that there's some fairly people who've done well in their life, so we say, people in our sport. And it's it's not a cheap sport to get into, and yeah, they came to our rescue.
yeah, that's amazing. Are you still the majority owner, or you and Dylan? I don't know how you split it up, but the co-founders are still the majority owner of the company.
Yeah, between the two of us, we still own more than 50%. Yeah,
Good. That's awesome. That's good to hear because I've heard like some stories in the past where like some people do give up some of that, and then it can get kind of hairy down the line if visions change and whatnot. So a little bit of a touchy
yeah, you
subject, I guess, but I figured I'd ask.
yeah, definitely. So it's the second time we've raised money, basically, and yeah, the general rule of thumb is you dilute by about 20%, or you give up about 20% of the company at each funding round. It's a general rule of thumb, and that's
Hmm.
generally how it's played out for us. Yeah, but you don't want to at the same time dilute the founders to the point where they are no longer, it's their only thing in life that they have to achieve. It's, if it,
Yeah,
say if someone owns 10% and you're looking to invest in the company, it's like, well, why are you going to get out of bed in the morning? Why are you going to get out after 4 hours sleep and do a
yeah,
podcast at 7 a.m. sort of thing? Um, and yeah, so that's a consideration. So that's like 20% rule of thumb. Sort of, you don't want to delete too much.
yeah. Right, right, right. Yeah, man, that's a wild journey that you've been on so far. Do you think you'll end up raising another round, like a Series C or however you would look at it, or a Series A, Series B? I'm not sure exactly where you're at.
Yeah, we called this the seed round, the million New Zealand. It's probably about
Okay.
600,000 US. Um, we'd love not to. We have a plan where we would be able to borrow for on the basis of
Yeah.
contracts at our next round. But we
Yeah.
may require a little top up between now and then from existing investors. But yeah, we're hoping not to dilute the existing investors now too much further. So,
Yeah. If I might ask, how do you? I mean, I understand like you have a physical product, you have the app for the referees. I know how the product works because you explained that in the beginning. But how do you actually monetize that? Because different races have different number of pros. Do you just kind of do it based on the number of athletes that are going to be using it, and you charge it on like a base rate, or how do you even how did you structure that out and figure out how to have like a monetization plan?
yeah, sure. So the whole concept is hardware as a service. So just like a timing company goes to a triathlon at the moment, they turn up with a vehicle, van, and a couple of
Sure.
guys with all the timing gear, the mats and the chips, etc. They distribute it to the athletes. The athletes do the race. They take the stuff back, provide the results. The event pays the timing company, and they take their stuff back and go to the next race. That's how we are operating at the moment. I've got a room
Yeah.
full of gear at the moment. We're going to put them on athletes' bikes today. Tomorrow they race. I take them back, clean them up, go to the next race. So hardware as a service. Now, at the moment, we're operating only on the professional athletes, primarily for two reasons, basically. We only have so many devices. We only have 120 sets currently. So there's sort of an upper limit to the field size we can manage. But
Sure.
our, our, our our focus is to get to the age groups, to the larger field sizes. And to get there, we believe there's merit in having a couple of years doing professional races only, so that the age groupers
Yeah.
can understand the technology, the concept, and I guess want it and need it for their competitions as well down the line. And we're obviously using the professional racing as a good testing ground to iron out features and understand how to deliver it from week to week in a scalable and seamless way. And we're making good improvements there at the moment. That was sort of your question. So remind me what you're asking. This is where the lack
Oh
of
yeah,
sleep
I was just
can
asking,
catch us out.
is in terms of like how much cost or how are you
Yeah,
charging? Like, is it
how are we
per
charging here?
athlete or per unit? Like the use in
Yeah, yeah. So from a startup perspective, if you think about what we're doing in the pros this year and probably into next year as sort of a marketing exercise, we're not really looking to make much money, if any, on this operation. It's great when you can bring in some revenue, but
Okay.
the real goal is to get it out there and get it understood. So we are charging on a per event basis. We're not charging a hell of a lot. It's basically just covering my costs and part of my salary to travel around the
Yeah.
world and have other people working for us delivering it as well, with the goal of reaching that age group scale. So it's a per
Yeah.
event basis at the moment. Doesn't really matter to me whether you've got 20 pros at a PTO race or 100. It's just a couple of hours more work. I'm already there, so it's just a per event basis.
Yeah.
When we get to the
Yeah.
the eventual age group model, the idea is that it's a per athlete charge, probably maybe with like it is with timing. There's a base charge for us to come, and then there's an incremental per athlete charge, and that's something that the event can can promote the event as having Race Ranger and being more fair and all the other things we're going to add to the product, and it potentially is swallowed as part of the entry cost, and that hopefully won't lead to much of an increase. But the event, that'll be up to the event to decide how they pass it on or absorb it.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful that I'm having this conversation with you now because when it does get to that stage and I'm going out on course and I see all of the age groupers just lined up and you see all the lights, it's gonna look like little cars driving. It'll be interesting. They don't make any sounds, I guess. Like it's all color based from what I read, so it'll be interesting to see. And you can yell at somebody, "Hey, quit drafting."
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, we're hoping that to get a timeline, we've just started 2024. We're making 500 sets of a slightly new version at the moment, which will be used through this year at pro events. But with that 450, 500 sets, I'd like to be starting some age group scale trials by the end of this year. So sort of our summer again in about
Yeah.
10 months' time.
Yeah. Wow. That's a big timeline. So, or a short timeline, I
You
guess.
frozen there.
But you said earlier in our conversation that you're going to be at 42 races this year. There's only 52 weeks in a year. So, are you traveling to every race yourself?
Sorry, Seth, just lost you there completely for about 10 seconds.
Can you hear me now?
Ask the question again. Yep.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier in this conversation that you have 42 races this year, if I recall correctly, that you're going to be going to. There's only 52 weeks in the year. Are you traveling to each one of these races to do this?
Yeah, so we're just figuring all that out. Obviously, I can't be everywhere at all times. The plan is to have two other people as well. So I'm actually meeting with one of them, potential people we're going to hire today at this event here. And we've got a guy we're also talking with in the US to work for us over there. I'll be moving to, well, the plan is I'll move to Europe, move to France with my wife and family from April. She's French, obviously. So the kids are fluent in French. And yeah, we're going initially for 6 months till through to October to see if we want to do it again the following year or maybe just stay on. But I won't be doing it all myself. At this stage, it sort of depends on which events we get contracted in the next sort of month. But looking like I'll go to sort of 25 out of the 45 events myself. So a lot of triathlon travel and spending days in Airbnbs like I am today.
Yeah. So you said earlier when we were talking that you kind of lost, like you weren't doing very well in terms of like, I guess, mentally, just because you're so tired, and physically with you've got all this stuff going on. Have you been able to add things back into your life now that are bringing a semblance of balance? I know it's impossible to to truly be balanced as an entrepreneur? I don't know if it is possible. Maybe you disagree, but are you finding some rest in there so that you can kind of keep that healthy mindset and physical body and things like that?
Yeah, I think I am. I've started making time for exercise, which has been great. Um, I've got some time at the moment, which is nice. So December, January, I'm not an engineer. I'm not writing the code. I have people doing that for me. My main job is the commercial side
Nice.
and project managing those guys. So I try to stay out of their way as much as I can. We have a weekly check-in on a Zoom call, and then I also try and get up to. I live 4 or 5 hours away from where all the work's been done as well. So I try and get up there at least once every 2 weeks, if not every week at the moment, just for
Okay.
another in-person hour sort of thing. So I'm not hands-on that much on the product building side. If I was, it'd be a nightmare. I'd just destroy
Yeah.
myself, I think. Just stay up building it all night.
Yeah.
Um, so I've got some
Yeah,
time at the
for
moment,
sure.
which is great, but I know there's a crazy year coming up. So I'm trying to look after my body to prepare it for a torrid time in that sort of May, June, July, August period, which is going to be really, really busy, just one week after the other, going to triathlons and driving a van around Europe, basically, and then the odd flight back to the US to cover things off there. And um, yeah, so
Yeah.
I've been swimming this week. I've actually, for like first time since I retired, I've been swum every day this week. It's Friday, and if I get to the water today,
Wow.
it's 5 days in a row, which is pretty cool. Um, I
Yeah.
went to the dentist, which I just have been putting off and haven't done for ages, just because I don't want to get caught in the middle of the year with teeth falling
Yeah.
out or something, in Europe, and that kind of thing. So yeah, and
Yeah.
just spending time with family, making sure I'm there for the kids and giving my wife some as much rope as she needs to get on top of her work and get her own business in shape.
Yeah.
So yeah, the answer is yes. Although
Oh,
yeah, you have to be ready to respond to things.
what?
Yeah, last night I had some contractual emails and I was like, I have to do this now. So it was like, okay, I'm up till 1, 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So trying to avoid that stuff. Yeah,
Wow. So you're very tired. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for jumping
yeah, at the
on,
moment,
even
but
though
I'll be
you're
fine.
so tired, because I'm sure it's not easy to tell all of these stories when you got that going on. That's not easy. So I really do appreciate it.
I hope it's been a bit coherent. Usually when I do this, if you feel great in the moment and then you listen back or reread your emails, you're like, oh gosh, I got to sleep some more.
Yeah.
So hope it's not a train wreck.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I can't listen to any of my own podcasts. My wife, I was laying in bed last night actually because she's been trying to catch up because she's starting to believe in this thing now, and she's in like episode 9 or 10, and she was giving me some feedback, and I was like, "Oh, honey, I know. Don't tell me again because it's just embarrassing." But that's part of the growth of anything that we do, I think. So it's good, and you're doing a great job. Um, but I do want to ask another question. So I was looking at your team, and it looks like your father is the CFO of the company. So um, does he keep you fiscally responsible? Like, is that his role? Like, how does he fit into the company?
Yeah, we've given him that title. So my dad had a pretty varied corporate life. He worked for a digital corporation selling computer systems, big computer systems to businesses through the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
Rose to sort of country manager in New Zealand, and then restructuring with Australia and got made redundant at sort of my age, sort of thing, 40, and reinvented himself as a bit of an entrepreneur. Bought a couple of businesses, a couple of them failed,
Well,
a couple of them did okay. He's sort of now semi-retired, and he does a few hours a week as sort of a small business advisor in the area we live in Monica. And it's great. They live, 2 miles from where I live, just up the road on the way to kids' school. So
oh, that's great.
we're really lucky to have their support there. And so in his
Yeah.
sort of small business advisor role, he helps like typically a roofing company or a company making kitchens with 10 to 20 employees, basically get the business in
Mm.
order and help the owner um, run it properly like a business, and you often prepare it for sale. So he's got good understanding of accounting systems and things. Not an accountant, but what should be in place and the metrics you need to look after and that sort of thing. I
Yeah.
have a basic understanding of that stuff, and if I can do it if I really need to. But he's just basically said the last few years, hey, I'll handle all your annoying stuff that will take all your time so you can focus on really building the
Wow.
business. So for
Mm.
example, he does all my expenses. He manages the payroll and our tax GST. and we now have an accountant. He sort of is the go-between between the company and the accountant. So yeah, super helpful, and yeah, he gets a nice title of CFO, although he's not a paid staff member at this point. So, or a lot of sweat equity going in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's super good to have that for sure. Just so you can, like you were saying, like focus on building the business, obviously the product, and then the commercial side, which I'm sure you're still as an entrepreneur and and the co-founder, I'm sure still doing a little bit of everything, which is
Yeah.
good. I mean, that's like another form of an education, I guess.
Absolutely. I've learned a ton. Like I learned a lot when in my time at Specialized, but I've also learned a ton in this journey. And yeah, I wouldn't, just like my
Mhm.
triathlon career, I wouldn't take it back to where I am today.
Yeah, for sure. So with leadership, how do you feel like that you have grown, and do you see specific areas that you're working on from a leadership role as you build this into hopefully a company that takes over the entire market and just flourishes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Leadership and myself, I think I've always sort of enjoyed being a leader. When I was a kid, I was, captain of a few teams. I remember one that comes to mind was a school cycling team. We had a team time trial series where you ride in groups of 5 riders and you do, 16 or 10 mile out and back sort of time trial series competition. And I was able to form a team, I guess, at that school. And that was myself and 4 guys who were the year younger than me. So I was sort of naturally the oldest guy
Mm.
there, and I'd done it, and I had, had done it for a year longer than them, and sort of thought I knew what I was doing. And yeah, we sort of formed this really cool team, and the vibe was great, and we ended up winning national championships and things. And that was probably my fondest leadership
Mm.
experience. And then in my time at Specialized, I was given leadership of a team. I found that really hard because I had been one of the guys in that team, and I suddenly became their manager. And that isn't always that easy when
Mm.
you know suddenly the guys that you were sitting around the computers laughing and getting your job done, and but one of their sort of peers
Yeah.
suddenly gets elevated to be the boss, and ultimately is responsible for making sure that they do the right things. Yeah, had a bit of a challenging time with a couple of them after that, which wasn't that enjoyable. But
Sure.
yeah, I think
Mm.
now in my position now, I'm able to build the team from fresh as I want it, and that's really exciting, and really looking forward to growing the team, and yeah, being as good leader and effective as I can. So,
Yeah. How many, I guess, on payroll employees, and you can even not on payroll, like people, do you have a part of that core team from software development to manufacturing, obviously commercial side, all of it?
yeah, so we're very very lean. That's how we've always tried to run it as cost effective as possible. Right down to
Sure.
myself holding my day job as long as possible, not taking any salary. Um, so we have how it's sort of all come about. We have a company that we found in 2017 who develop products for other companies. So small to big startups to very large companies who have an interesting sort of problem that they don't know how to solve it, or they're not sure if it can be done. They go to this small company in Christchurch of about 15 employees, and they say, "Can you build us some sort of prototype that might address this issue?" Typically, and we found that they'd actually worked in some sports technology problems, and they knew the technology we were looking to work with, and so they have been the sort of backbone of our engineering. So this is guy called Marcus Klein. He doesn't like
Nice.
the limelight, so we won't publicize too much what they do. But yeah, they have been I guess, our technical guiding star the whole way through. Through them, eventually, we were, they were doing a lot of work for free initially for us, just investigations. We ended up, paying them for a few jobs and parts and things. The guidance was, you can probably get a student through the university graduate program and some government funding to have someone go full time on this. And so we got a couple of students do sort of 10-week blocks under that program. One of them ended up, there was a program called a graduate or career grant program. So the government is trying to help students who've done, higher education, master's or PhD sort of level studies transition into the workforce in their first job. So if you've recently finished the job, those courses within 6 months, you can a company can hire you for 6 months, a 6-month period, and the government basically 100% pays that salary for that time. They reimburse you as you go along.
Okay.
So we had a guy for 6 months, basically for free, worked full time on it. And then he had done some great work and made a lot of progress, and we didn't want him to stop, basically to the point where we found a way to hire him. So we have, in that capacity, we have like 1.5 sort of full-time software engineers who report to me, have written the whole code base of the program that runs the devices under the sort of direction of this other company who could have done it, but would have been a lot more expensive and probably quicker. But this is the way we had to do it. So I'm not a engineer at all, so I'm kind of trying to keep up with what my employees are doing, but we take technical direction from the people who know what they're doing at that contractor with Marcus. So 1.5 full-time other employees. I'm now full-time, so it's 2.5. And then there's this company that we can call on as needed to put, currently I think they've got 7 people working pretty heavily on our project. But at times, there might be just one person doing a couple hours a week as needed. So it's variable, and that really works for a startup, I believe, quite well, because, you've always got a runway and some cash left, and you always have choices on what you're going to go after and spend it on. And this way, keeping our costs low, we're able to basically say, okay, we want to build, right now we're building 450 sets of new devices. They can give us a fairly ballpark accurate quote on what that will cost and how long it will take. And then you can make a decision of, go or not. And you don't have, typically, unless startup, we might have 6 or 7 employees trying to solve that, and you've got then 6 or 7 salaries, which burns through your cash pretty quickly, and you don't know quite when the endpoint might be, and it's always that stress. So it's been nice in that sense. And then we have another company who did the enclosure design, like a specific design company to make it all go together and look pretty. And then got all the usual support structures, accountants and lawyers and things that we have on retainer. And then the only other sort of large component is around the university. So the link to that student was obviously going to the university and saying, hey, do you have any students? And it turned out that the person running the wireless research department at, I guess, the best engineering school in New Zealand, at Canterbury University in Christchurch, he's an age group triathlete, it turns out, in the local tri club, just dead keen, and goes on training camps and things overseas. So he's been super supportive, and to this day, it's sort of 3 years down the line, we have those 1.5 software engineers working based at the university still. That one of them's, he fully graduated and finished the studies. I don't know how he still has an ID card, but he's been there working out of the master's graduate study area for the last 2.5 years, completely rent-free, using all the computers and the testing equipment and 3D printers and things available.
It's a good job.
Which is just amazing. So we don't have a property, we don't have an office lease, that sort of thing. So really low burn, trying to stay as nimble as we can. And that's been, super helpful. And the professor there, the triathlete, he comes into our weekly meeting every year for coming on like 4 years now. So, and he, we use him for guidance and ideas. So that's how it's sort of structured. Dylan, my co-founder, is he's very busy himself as well. He's not so hands-on with the doing of things, but he's very helpful for me in the strategy and direction. And he's got some good connections in the sport. He's works for the PTO, the Professional Triathletes Organization. So it's really good to have him where he is.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you understand, it sounds like, just from a lot that you just shared, the stress that comes with being like an entrepreneur. It comes in many different forms, from family, from not necessarily having the right amount of cash, or problems that come down the pike from manufacturing, software and hardware aren't working together, whatever it is. You understand from running short course and doing as well, like that's super intense pain that you're feeling for however much time, and then you kind of get used to that feeling. Okay, this is what it feels like to go hard. Do you feel like you are getting the hang of the stress and the swings that come with being an entrepreneur, and you're more of a stable person now than when you first started, or do you still have quite a bit of give, like up and down?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, totally right. It's total, like there's always a fire to put out. Like it's a cliche, but it's true. Like there's always something going wrong, and it's on you ultimately as the founder or the CEO to put the fire out or to solve the problem and to basically to will this thing into existence at times, which is
Yeah.
takes a lot. But you have to be passionate about what you're doing and believe in it, which we do. Um, I just so touched on something for me. So transition, I guess, from sport into the real world 10 years ago, going into specialized, and how that's sort of similar now. When, like I said, I was dreading the real world and having a real job and having to go to work every day, and
Yeah.
also not having the last, all my peers had sort of 10 years of being in jobs at that point, and we're getting married and buying houses, and I owed my dad 20 grand when I finished, sort of thing, and had nothing to my name and no
Woo.
experience. But
Yeah.
what I found pretty quickly was, the work ethic you have of being a professional athlete, you have to work very, very hard. And everybody on that start line has worked really, really hard. And there are varying different things that motivate different people. But, lining up with Javier Gomez and Alistair Brownlee on your shoulders, is a different level of competitiveness than in the real world and in business generally.
Mm.
And I found that, getting a job and working in business, it's very easy compared to triathlon to get ahead. You basically just have to, again, work harder than the person next to you. And generally they're not that prepared to go the lengths that you are as a do or die triathlete. So I found it quite easy.
Yeah.
I'd get to 6 o'clock at work and I'd be sitting at my desk before I had kids, obviously, and thinking, I feel really lazy. It's the end of the day, but I feel really lazy because I'm not as tired as I used to be. I'm not always tired. I had all this energy suddenly, and I felt like I had to keep working because all I have to do is I'll just work a bit harder and we'll smash this other company we're trying to compete with, or this person I'm trying to, I'm my rival over here. And all you have to do is go the extra
Yeah.
mile and boom, success. So I learned a lot from sport, and that has carried across, dealing with problems and setbacks and injuries and all the things you encounter. And I guess the other thing that's been useful from that is, maybe it's going back to when I was a kid, moving around a lot from city to city every few years. But you kind of understand, so you learn how to land somewhere in some foreign country where they don't speak your language and get by, and get a result as much as you can. So you land somewhere, let's say we're going to Poland this week. I've never been to Poland. Okay, you plan your trip, where you're going to stay, where the race is, how you're going to find food, that sort of thing. But when you land, you've got to deal with these people who don't understand you, and you've got no idea how to get around. We didn't have smartphones back then, and that I think has been helpful in this journey, because you find a way to, you sort of I've learned to, I believe, to a way to communicate with people that you've never met, and to kind of get to where you would like to go with them, and get the result. And yeah, I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but yeah, I learned a lot
No,
about
I understand.
communication in professional triathlon that I took into working at Specialized, and then I've learned a lot Specialized on top of that, which I'm now taking into this role. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I was to offer you right now $100 million to buy Race Ranger, would you take it?
Sure. I think Race Ranger
You think you would?
is my first startup. We can talk after this. It's my first startup. I think ultimately there's a finite size to this opportunity. Like this, it's a decent sized opportunity. There's no one doing it currently, and there's quite a large sport there. And obviously we've pitched the business to investors that there's XYZ opportunity, so it's worth investing. But it's also, we believe, small enough that it's not that attractive for someone like a Garmin or a big company to jump in and want to go through all the pain that we've just gone through for the last 5 years to build a product that solves the problem. It's been a really tough problem to overcome. It hasn't been sort of a really short development cycle. It's been a
Sure.
lot of dead ends and hopefully, let's try this method that's never been done to solve this little part of the problem, and that might not work. And if it doesn't, maybe we should try this B plan. So a lot of that sort of pain,
Yeah.
the amount of time, and if I, worked all the hours I'd worked on it and paid myself an hourly rate, it'd be, in the millions of dollars down to where we are now, versus what we've actually spent.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that the market opportunity is big enough really for a bigger company to go after. So we're sort of protected in that way, but at the same time, we think there's a big enough opportunity for the size company we have. And but 100 million, I don't know. Like we would have to really add some further market opportunities to get there. We would have to branch out into, I don't know, tracking of military or something extra. But who knows? That might come down the line. But right now at this point, if you want to buy the company for 100 million, let's talk afterwards. No problem.
I have all of this much money, so no worries. I don't think I'm going to be coming knocking on your door anytime soon. But I was just curious if it was like, I know when people create things or when I create something, depending on what it is, there's different levels of passion behind each project. So I was trying to gauge the level of passion behind this one, in that could money satisfy a parting from a baby that you've grown and is now learning to walk and soon to be to run. I was just trying to gauge that level there. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess definitely you've got to always have like an amount in mind, because I've got investors as well who, if we got a
They want to
million,
pay out.
like $100 million offer, you've got to treat that responsibly, and that would be a great outcome for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to take it to where it's going. Believe we're going to get there. If an acquisition offer comes along the way, we've got to address it, and that'd be great. But it's not our ultimate short-term goal. Perhaps one day, once we do reach those age group scales, it might make sense. Right
Yeah.
now, no, we're fully invested personally in it and passionate about it.
Yeah, for sure. Was your because when you went from professional athlete to working in the office, we talked a number of things about not wanting to go and, oh, this new life is going to be boring. It's not the same, yada, yada, yada. But did you ever struggle with an identity kind of a crisis from like who I am as an athlete? How do I transition that to be like a person in the workforce? And then my eventual question is, if you were to eventually cut off Race Ranger, be acquisition, or you're just ready to move on to something else, do you think it would be difficult? Do you ever struggle with the identity shifts there?
I don't think so. Going back to the part about leaving being an athlete, going specialized. There was still kind of, I had this identity of being now a recent Formula athlete, like, and having
Yeah.
that was still a bit of a shine from that, I guess. But now, I don't really. I mean, it is useful being a former athlete. I still have connections. Today I'm going to go and put these devices on Javier Gomez's bike, and I used to race with him, so we can talk and we're friends. But so that sort
Yeah,
of
that'd be
gives you a
cool.
bit of credibility. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's my identity. I think if this all fell over and I had to do something else now at 40 years old, now that I've been through this journey, I've learned so much, and really passionate about
Yeah.
startups and how it operates, and it's super exciting. I'd like to think that the experience I've gained is worth something and would lead to another opportunity, and perhaps I think I would like to work in another startup of some sort. I don't know if I have a multitude of great ideas that would come from me, but might be latching onto someone else's idea and becoming, an early employee at another company. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
startup life definitely suits me, in the way that startups operate, and the opportunities and the ideas you have to come up with and think outside the box to creatively solve problems, and just get things done quickly is, I find, a great way to work, and always want to hold on to that if I can.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, do you think that being an athlete or being an entrepreneur has brought you a greater sense of fulfillment and happiness?
One or the other, which one? Uh,
Yeah. Do you think
Poor,
which
yeah.
one do you think?
It's a really tough one. They're very similar in terms of the euphoria. Like, when you win a race, it's a great feeling, right? And when you lose a race, it feels pretty terrible. But you try to come back and learn from it and go stronger. And in business world and being an entrepreneur, similar thing. I guess there are more wins. It feels like the wins come more regularly, so it's more of a adrenaline rush. Every day,
Yeah.
not every day, but often there is some little thing, and every little thing is a step closer. Maybe it's, yes, somebody replied to my email. I just got an email from Chris
Yeah.
Foster from Triathlete magazine pop up. Like, what's that about? Cool, that's a step forward. You don't always
Yeah.
have those days when you're racing. You might have, often, particularly in that short course world, 3 out of 4 races you probably come home disappointed most of the time, or something goes wrong, or doesn't always go your way. Where you don't always have a great training day. You feel tired and lethargic all the time because you're pushing yourself really hard. So yeah, it's probably probably more of a adrenaline rush when I think about it being an entrepreneur. When things are going well, and when they're going badly, it's really bad. It's at least when you're injured, okay, this is a medical thing, and this has got a diagnosis. This
Yeah.
stress fracture will take 8 weeks, no running. I can aqua jog. I'll be back. Let's set some new goals. When things are going bad in the startup, it's like really bad. Can be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's harder to accept in an entrepreneurial setting a lack of control because it feels like something you should be able to control. I always struggle figuring out what are the things I can and cannot control in the entrepreneur world. But when it comes, like you said, being an athlete, if you break your leg, or to be an extreme example, or if you tear your hamstring or something, maybe you could have done something before, but in that moment, like, it's out of your control. You have to rest, and you're forced to do such, or you get more injured. So that's what I was wondering. But to ask that question again, though, which one do you think made you happier and gave you a greater sense of fulfillment, or can you even compare them?
Ah, good. Yeah. No, I don't know if I can at this point. We're like with
Yeah,
the
that's fine.
startup, we're about to launch on this really exciting journey, and go around the world again, which was a cool part of being a triathlete was traveling a lot and going to cool places,
Going
and
around.
you know yeah. So that's about to sort of kick off with the family. I guess the journey to this
Yeah.
point, I would say triathlon was probably um, more enjoyable overall. I was in my 20s versus being in my late 30s, um, through most of it, and it comes with a lot more freedoms and cool experiences, shall we say, and opportunities to party versus
Yeah. Yeah.
middle age and being the boss. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I'm very excited for the next couple of years and beyond. I don't
Yeah.
I don't feel like if I had to trade one for the other, like right now, obviously I'd want to go back and be in my 20s again. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty happy with where I am at the moment.
Yeah. Good deal. Well, I have two more final questions, and then I'll let you go because I know you got some work to do. The first question goes back all the way in the beginning of our conversation. I made a note because you said something that made me think around the timing of when you left your career as a professional athlete, because you thought that you could go on to the next Olympics, 2016, I believe. You thought like maybe you could make that happen, and it sounded like there was a little bit of regret, maybe, in the timing of how all that worked out. Is that an accurate assessment or inaccurate assessment?
Um,
Observation.
I think any athlete who tells you that they finished with no regrets, they're probably lying a little bit. Everyone always wants more, and like I had those
Sure.
goals, I had those dreams of winning the gold medal. Basically, I grew up wanting to do what Alistair Brownlee did, and I'm sure 50 other kids did and believed they could make it, and a lot of them
Yeah.
got pretty close, but only one person can do that. And at some point, you have to,
Mm.
the 49 others of us have to deal with that, and it does feel like a bit of a failure. And so, but it's a reality. Like there's certain limits to everyone's physiology, and some are born being able to do a few runs a week and run a 13:35K, and some are work their ass off to get to 14 minutes. And I was sort of in the latter camp. So um, it is what it is, and you can't do anything about it. So do I regret not going on and doing those last 4 years? I don't think I do. It would be cool to have Olympian next to my name. That would have been nice. So let's say 14th at the Olympics. But
Yeah.
also I kicked off my career in those 4 years and learned a hell of a lot in my first real job, which gets me where I am today. So no, I'm not I don't think about it too much. It's not something that keeps me awake at night. Like, damn, I should have done it. You always
Yeah.
believe, oh, I should get back into it. You have the dream. You're like, oh, I'm racing again. I'm fit. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it goes away.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. I was a little hesitant to ask that question because I know that can be like a lot of emotion around it, but you seem to deal with challenge challenges and disappointments, and if we can dare call them failures, pretty well. So I admire that and appreciate your perspective on it. But for my final question for you, it is a selfish question. So you have 3 kids. From reading on your website, I believe their ages are 7, 5, and 3. So I'm 30.
Hmm.
How old am I? I'm 31. I'm going to be 32 in September. Been married for 7 years, and kids are on the horizon. So, as a potential new father, what advice do you have for me on being a dad?
Whew. Enjoy your life while you can before you have kids. No. Enjoy your sleep.
Yeah, that's what I've
um,
been told.
but at the same time, like I actually, I don't know if this is a common father's thing, but that first one, when they come along, you just have you don't know yet, but you have these moments, and some people get lucky and their kids are just great sleepers, but that wasn't the case for us. And so you have these moments where it's like, middle of the night, 2, 3 o'clock in the night, and they're crying. It's my turn to go to the room, and you end up holding the baby till they go to sleep again, and you're just standing there kind of half asleep. And I just found after about 6 months of that, I didn't need as much sleep as I used to, which is weird. I used to be, an athlete, and sleep's really important, and you get your 8 hours, and you often nap a couple times during the day. But I was able to function the next day pretty much after getting up every night for being awake a lot of the night and getting very little sleep. And I term it like I feel like something broke in my head, and after that, it became like a superpower. If I needed to work really late and hard, I could, and I could operate the next day. And so I attribute that to that first year of that first child, but and it's still like that
Yeah,
today. But advice for first time, gosh, just enjoy it. You only get to do it once, and they're only young once. Obviously, be around is the key thing. Like, don't stress the small stuff too much. Like everyone's worried about, oh, I've got to be the perfect father, and like, how do you define what the perfect father is? And if you're always thinking about it, you're not really enjoying the process yourself either. So
mm,
just being there is the main thing, and doing the best you can for the kids, however that might play out. Yeah, just do best, and be there is the main thing. Yeah.
yeah. Well, James, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on with me and to answer so many questions, especially when you are low on sleep. But I wish you all the best. We all wish you all the best as this episode is airing. This race will have already happened. But as you continue on through the rest of 2024 and beyond, I'm rooting for you. I wish I did have 100 million I'd offer. But yeah, it was really awesome to have you on. So thank you so much for sharing your story and the advice on being a dad and so many other things.
Thanks, Seth. Good to meet you. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you again so much to James for coming on the podcast and sharing so much about his journey from being a professional athlete and then retiring and moving in and on to the entrepreneur scene after working for a stint at Specialized. It was really neat to hear his story and even get some of that future father advice for anyone who wants to know. No, I am not pregnant, or my wife is not pregnant yet. But anyway, I wanted to ask those questions because I feel like it solicits some good advice that hopefully all of us can learn from. If you made it to this point in the podcast, just want to say thank you so much for listening. Your listens really do make a difference and help us to grow this podcast. If you're watching or listening on any platform, please like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell if you're on YouTube. If you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of those other types of podcast platforms, if you don't mind giving us a review, that would be super helpful. And oh, yes, the last thing, stupidquestions.show is our website. If you would like to receive an newsletter from me or from the team about exclusive offers and giveaways with sponsors we have coming up or may already have running on this episode, you can do that and be a part of that family. All right. Thank you so much. And we will catch you guys in the next one.